This is the Construction Leading Edge podcast from constructionleadingedge.com and buildermasterclass.com. My name is Todd DeWalt. It's my job to help you, the construction business owner and leader, eliminate chaos, maximize profits. In this episode, you'll hear an interview with Mike Brewer. He's the founder and CEO of the Brewer Companies, which includes a plumbing company in Arizona with around 400 employees. And here's what you're going to learn. How one word on Mike's business card years ago helped to steer business decisions. You'll hear about the unique solution that Mike's company is using to solve the skilled labor shortage. They're not trying to find plumbers, they're making them. The piece of information that would have prevented Mike from starting his training program if he had known about it. You'll hear about how Mike almost went out of business 3 times and a couple of the reasons behind the near failures. Mike talks about the importance of attaching actions to outcomes. He talks about why they provide financial management training for their new hires, personal financial management. Mike says not having enough cash puts you out of business faster than anything else. He also discusses the importance of staying in your lane and understanding your limits. And also you'll hear Mike's thoughts on having a business coach and what kind of system to follow. Great stuff. You're going to get a lot out of this if you want to grow a business, if you want to start a business, or if you want to grow your team and hire more people. Lots of great nuggets in here. Before we get into that interview, here are a couple of resources that I want to share with you. The construction industry is facing major headwinds. More than 80% of contracting firms report that they're having trouble finding skilled labor, and greatly inflated material costs are eroding the bottom line. To be profitable, you need to be able to do more with less time, less money, and most importantly, you really need to manage your critically essential labor force with greater precision. Let's face it, the inefficiency of old school manual data entry and paper pushing is wasting thousands of dollars in valuable time every day. You need to know what's happening on your job sites in real time. The solution is Struxxy labor productivity software. Built on over 50 years of construction tech innovation, Struxxy replaces outdated paper timesheets and production reports with software that updates you every hour on labor performance. Struxxy labor productivity software tracks your crews in the field down to each individual worker across multiple projects and allows project managers and job site supervisors to track labor production down to the cost code. Fully customizable reports allow you to establish ambitious but realistic daily production goals and estimate how many crew members and workdays are needed to complete a job on time and under budget. Struxxy lives in the cloud. It can be deployed on relatively inexpensive tablets and laptops, and it is incredibly easy to use. Plus, by reducing time clock rounding errors, it will pay for itself on your first project. Visit Struxxy.com to estimate your annual savings with their cost-saving calculator and to sign up for a 30-day free trial. That's Struxxy.com. Struxxy.com. Software built for hard work. Let me ask you 2 questions. How many hours did you waste in the last month doing free estimates? And then how many profit bleeds, like rework, lost time, schedule delays, and even uncomfortable conversations have you had in the last month because of free estimates? Look, a growing number of builders, remodelers, and commercial general contractors are getting paid to do pre-construction planning and estimating. They're getting paid for their time. They're wasting less time, maybe even no time, with tire kickers. And they're cutting out a lot of the profit bleeds that are caused by free estimates. But what could I possibly say to a potential customer to get them to pay me for an estimate when everybody else does them for free? If you're wondering that, there are 3 specific questions that you can ask on your next appointment to get your prospect and maybe even get yourself to see that it's in their best interest to pay you for pre-construction services. Don't send out another free estimate until you learn these 3 questions. Go get your free training video with those 3 questions over at buildermasterclass.com/script. That's buildermasterclass.com/script. Here we go. Let's jump into that interview with Mike Brewer. Might want to take notes on this one. All right, Mike, welcome to the podcast. You're a busy guy. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I've got lots of interesting stuff to talk about, but let's just start with your business. You have a unique size of business, and you're in a unique position. Just tell us about your business and how big the company is, what kind of work you do.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on. Appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion with you. And, if anything can come out of this, I guess, to help anyone else in the trades, and that's what it's all about. But so to answer that question, we've got a kind of unique offer, I guess, our main business. So we have multiple business entities. They're all plumbing related. We have I'll just start out with the franchise business. So Benjamin Franklin Plumbing, obviously you can see on my shirt, I got a little truck with a logo in the background there. So here in the Phoenix market, we're the Ben Franklin franchisee here locally. We also have a company called Brewer Commercial Services, and that provides, initially was founded on hydrojetting, drain cleaning, and ultimately, a friend of mine owned it. We joined forces back in 2007. We added a plumbing component to it. So mainly service repair, but has branched over into new build on small commercial projects. So we'll do restaurants, hotels, that type thing. And also some of the multifamily residential stuff. But our biggest company and one that we really orient to is called Brewer Enterprises. And that is a residential new construction company. We've been in business. That entity was my first company, 32 years roughly, or we're in our 32nd year, I guess, best way to put it. Enterprise-wide, those all reside under what we call Brewer Companies, which is our shared services entity. My accounting department, HR, safety, things of that nature reside in that company. Company-wide, Brewer company-wide, we have a little over 400 employees. The vast majority of those, 300 plus, would be on the new construction side. But so it's all plumbing related. We tried other things over the years and realized we're really good at what we know, and that's plumbing.
Interesting. So we're going to talk about a unique approach that you're taking to solving the skilled labor shortage. One that, as you told me when we talked a couple of weeks ago, that you probably wouldn't have gotten into if you knew how bad the prospects were of success, but you've had a much different experience there. But let's go back to a story you told me about early on in your business. Some situation came up and you looked at a tagline, a word in the tagline on your business card, this word professional. And it sounded like that had a pretty profound impact on the direction of the business. Can you talk about that situation and what that word is and what it's meant to you?
Yeah, certainly. So I named off the businesses, and I said the biggest one we have there is Brewer Enterprises. Well, the challenge is when I'd hand someone a card and it said Brewer Enterprise on it, the natural question was, what do you do? And it's like, yeah, that really doesn't speak to what we do at all. It happened to be, the story around it was I worked for a guy for 12 years, about 11 years plus, and ended up buying him out and was going to take his name over when I bought it. So I went ahead and incorporated it as Brewer Enterprises, Inc., and then was going to DBA. And right at the last minute, he decided to hang on to the name of the company. We just went right on ahead and started doing business as Brewer Enterprises. And so the problem with the card was, again, no one knew what I did. And so we added a tagline, as you said, and basically the tagline was your professional plumbing contractor. And so I think the word you brought up or that we discussed was the professional. And so, it's an interesting thing, I guess, a phenomenon. When you put that on a card and you profess yourself to be a professional, then you probably should act like one. And the decisions that you make around how you do business need to fill on that commitment, if you will. So, we ended up becoming the professional plumbing contractor, and consequent to that, literally, I came right out of high school working for a neighbor of mine. In fact, I worked there initially while I was a junior, senior for gas money, and went to work for him full time. And so, my education level is high school. I did, when I got ready to buy the company, went over to community college, took a couple of accounting classes over there for a couple semesters. And so I formalized the numbers piece of it. But all in all, it really was about, I was a really good technician, really good at what I did, ran the field for them, although it was a very small company at the time. I think at the end there were 6 employees, 5 employees total, something like that. So I knew how to run the field. I'd done that for 3 or 4 years for them. But I'd never bid anything, never paid a payroll. I mean, I just had no idea what the office side of that equation looked like. And so when I learned that early on, and then as we started growing the business, we'd run into a situation, say for the first time, or we'd have a breakdown, I guess a better way to put it, and say, well, shoot, how should we have done that? How should we think about doing that going forward? And then, kind of fell under the word professional, and what would a professional do? And so we made it up along the way for the most part, but always with that kind of background around, how can we do it better, different, more professional than the standard that the marketplace held, I guess, at that point in time. And it served us well. And so to answer the, where you kind of led me to was the unique, aspect of solving the labor shortage. That falls smack dab under the professionalism subtitle, I guess, a better way to put it, in the sense that 2.5 years ago, we've talked about what was dubbed Brewer University for years, but never taken the step, never incurred the cost. But we just felt like, to really grow our company, to really, be able to excel, that we needed to probably produce labor to do it. And so a few years ago, as the Phoenix market rebounded, there was a lot of opportunities. And one of those was, the demand is huge compared to the relative labor force. And so inside Brewer, it's a bigger, really, I've been working on this for over 6 years, but 2.5 years ago, November of 2018, we started what we called Brewer Craftsman Academy. And it was nothing more than putting together a program to bring young men and women that had zero experience in the plumbing trade into the trade, train them how to do a role, perform a task that solved the challenge that we faced as a business, but not only that, really solved the challenge they faced in their career, of which they didn't have any for the most part. For the most part of the people we're talking with that have gone through the program, what we really love in the way of an age group is somewhere in that 20 to 26, 25-year-old group. And there's a specific reason for that. And the reason is we like them to have gone out, had some jobs, jumped around from place to place, and never really thought about a career. And, because, and it's what I speak to them when they come in the door. And I typically, day 3, I come in for lunch and spend an hour or 2 with them and have a conversation. But, one of the questions or statements I make, I guess, a better way to put it, is that, if you're here for a job, it's a great time to leave, because that's not what we're about. We're about to launch into helping you learn a career, learn a trade that you can have a career in, that you can take care of your family in, and by doing. And so it's really turned out to be a great program. Size-wise of our business, we built 7,000 houses last year in 2020 between Phoenix and Tucson. 23% of those houses were built by, frankly, a workforce that didn't know anything about plumbing trade 12 months prior to that. So it's been a huge success. It really has solved some of our problems. The problem we faced was, for me to hire 5 people meant somebody else lost 5 people, or several people lost people. And so the net add that we brought to the marketplace has been just a real, I think I don't know the best way to describe it, but it's just a breath of fresh air, I think, is what we're getting from our builder partners, that they know they can depend on us when we sign a contract, that we'll get the work done. And we're building the workforce to do that. Having stated all that, it's now summertime in Phoenix, as we just had a brief little chat prior to getting going here. It was 118 degrees yesterday. Demand is still there, but you cannot physically do the work you can when it's 85 out in Phoenix. And so, like any other trade at this time of year, we're challenged with keeping up with schedules. but I think we do a really good job of it because of the workforce we built. It definitely helps us be able to perform.
So you told me that you had a conversation with someone who heard about your academy, and they seemed fascinated by it, and they just kept asking questions. And uh, finally, the person told you that they were so curious about it because your success rate was, well, if you had known how bad the success rate was for these kind of programs, you never would have started. Can you talk about what the typical success rate or the retention rate is and what your retention rate has been?
All I can speak to is what I learned, I guess, through this process. And, you kind of alluded to, we would have never started this program had I known that up front. And there's another program out there, and they're doing a good job. But it's an offshoot of the Home Builders Association. It's a lot of the major home builders in the country have come together. And the gal that runs that, we've had several discussions over the years, last couple of years, year and a half, I guess. And we continue to have discussions, or we had several discussions. I finally said, why are you calling me? I mean, why are we getting together, having breakfast, lunch? She'd fly into town and we'd meet while she was in town. And, she shared with me the national averages. And she said, Mike, what we find is historically, nationwide, 1 out of 10 people that start in the trades today will still be in it a year from now. And I was like astounded. I had no idea. If we had known that up front, we'd have never gone down this path. But we were ignorant of it, and we had a need. And so we figured out a way to solve our need. And, so the reason she was so interested was, I think at the time, our retainage rate was somewhere right around 50%. And so, but I think the class, just while that conversation was taking place, we were like 70%, but it hadn't been a year yet. So, a little early. But she was just, you're telling me that you can keep 5 to 7 guys out of 10 are still in the trade a year later. I mean, that's an overwhelming success, and we'd love to know what you're doing and how you're doing it. And, so since then, I mean, we've continued each time. I think we've run 6 classes now. Every class has gotten a little more refined. We get a little better at what we do. The first one is a complete disaster, I'll declare now. We started with 20 young men, and I think we have 1 that still is out in the field, so even worse than the national average. There were several reasons for that, all the way to who do we put in the seats to begin with. We found a much more refined process whereby we're interviewing, the candidates to come sit in a seat. What we've got now is an identity of success. And so when we do post, opportunity or the job openings that are available, the class openings, I guess, a better way to put it, we'll get anywhere from 100 to 150 applicants. And so we can be a little carefuler on what we look at and how we interview and the type of person that we're putting in the class to begin with. Again, we couldn't do that to begin with. No one trusted us. No one knew what we were doing. We just thought it was a good idea and let's go try this. But we've gotten a stronger curriculum, a better initial interview, and the people that got into the seat, our instruction's gotten better. And this latest class actually that we're doing right now, and so far it appears to be a huge success, it's going to even cut the time a little bit shorter to train and ultimately turn out a better, more well-rounded installer, if you will. The real key to the class is we just don't believe it takes 4 years to learn a trade. Not poo-pooing it. It just is what it is. It's historical. And I think that as a society and as an industry as a whole, we kind of fall into norms and history. And, historically, you take a young man or woman and put them into a trade and they end up going for 9-10 months out of the year, someplace for a couple nights a week for 3 or 4 hours while they're on the job, learning and learning after hours. And, to do that, it takes over 4 years, or it takes 4 years to get them done. What we're trying to do is very specific to residential new construction plumbing. And so we've broken it down to where they're very manageable, very teachable components of building a home that has them be expert in within roughly 6 months, know the job well. I won't go completely to expert because again, they're new, but they know how to do it. They just haven't gotten very, efficient, I guess the best way to put it, equating that to maybe a little bit of speed, because over time you learn how you want to do the things. But we've taught them the codes, the concepts, the philosophy around plumbing, all the things that they need to know. And then basically we slot them. We really are doing underground and top out. So the soil work and the top out work they kind of go down separate paths. And the interesting part is what we hear over and over is, year and a half after they're out there doing it, there's no real difference. One, I'm just happen to be in the dirt. The other one, I happen to be in a frame structure, but that doesn't appear that way to them when they don't know anything about it. And so by breaking it down even further into just that underground portion and really focusing on that, or just the top out portion, really focusing on that, we can get that taught up, trained up within about 6 to 7 months. And then they put out in the field and they've got what I'll call a mentor coach, is what really they answer to and is available to them. And every day they're around and they're working with them on different job sites. They're 2-man teams at that point, 2 trainees coming in together. And then they have a mentor coach that supports them, facilitates additional learning, encourages them, answers questions, checks quality, all those other things that ultimately we need to have a finished product. And again, it's just been a 2.5 year overnight success, I guess, is one way to put it. But no, the latest class, like I said, I alluded to something different. 2 days a week in class. So the nature of our course is 40 hours a week in full on training. It's 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. We're paying them a good wage to learn. And then as they progress through the program by month, they basically get another $1 an hour increase. So we're constantly testing them to make sure they're getting what we're teaching. And they progress all the way to when they go out in the field, they're at 33% more than they talk about. So I won't talk numbers, but it's a great living wage, not a problem at all. But ultimately in our marketplace, the way the market plays production pay. And so they'll come out and typically at that 9-month point, while they graduate completely on their own, they're on run rates. The low end of the class will be on a 60,000 a year plus run rate. The higher end will be on an 80,000 run rate. So, the difference between the two is they all have the knowledge. It's just some people work harder than others. They know how to be more efficient than others earlier on. And, but, again, the residential side sometimes takes a beating for what it pays, not in the Phoenix market. I mean, if you're in this trade in the Phoenix market, you do really well. I think the top plumber last year made mid six figures. I think right around $135,000, $140,000 last year was our best plumber. So they make a great living here. For other people, obviously, podcasts reach nationwide, worldwide. We're always looking to hire great guys. And so, again, I'll give us our own little plug there. We do like the training. The unintended consequence that we didn't expect, didn't know how to think about it. The nice part of the training program is they come in and the first few weeks are all about culture and opportunity and what we think and how we think as a business. And so it's our core values, very, very deeply around our core values. And what the outcome is when they get done with the program is, they've got this shared experience, this camaraderie amongst the group that have learned it together, and they're friends. They're not, someone new coming to a big shop that doesn't know anybody. They've learned it together. And, the quality is what we have taught them. The only way they know how to do it is the way we want it done. So there's not this argument about, well, this is how I did it at my last job. It's like, well, go back to your last job if that's how you want to do it. We're very specific and we're very quality conscious here. So it's been just a huge success for us. And frankly, we make the offer that anyone that's interested in a discussion around that, because I think the biggest breakdown we have as an industry is that future workforce and that training the future workforce. As I mentioned early on, I've been working on something for basically the labor force for about 6 years. Locally here in Arizona, we've got a website, and if you don't mind me plugging it, it's called Build Your Future Arizona. And so it's byfaz.org if you want to go look that up. But it really is just nothing more than a marketing campaign to invite our youth to consider a career in the trades. I'm a huge proponent of education, whether it be in the trades or in our normal school system through college. But this isn't either or. This is just another way, another alternative way to have a career. And, you get educated to learn how to do this, just like you get educated to be an attorney, a lawyer, a doctor, or, an accountant. I mean, you go the path you go because those are learned professions. And so you need to go to college to learn those things. And they don't teach what we teach in college. So it's a great career, great opportunity, and it's a great choice for those that want to work with their hands, aren't afraid of, getting out, being in the outdoors. Frankly, that was the reason I went the path I went. I didn't want to sit in an office, unfortunately, that I do all day today. But my original intent was I enjoyed working with my hands, being outdoors, being physical. So that's what kind of led me into the trades.
So a question about your demographics for the academy, and I'll be sure to include those links that you mentioned in the show notes. What percentage of applicants are young women?
Not near enough. Off the top of my head, I can't even answer that, but I know that we have put I think there's 3 ladies have gone through the course. I'll say gone through the course. I think 2 of them graduated. One of them was near graduation, and then she had an opportunity with a federal agency, I'll put it that way. And, it was one of those things where, we understand the choice you're making for you and your family, and we support it. And, if it doesn't work out, it's not what you think it is, you're more than welcome to come back. Mm-hmm. The other 2, so an interesting one thing we did so we train right here locally in our warehouse, in a big training room right across the hall from me. But we actually had a need, a small town called Casa Grande. It's between Phoenix and Tucson. And so we actually said, gee, can we actually pick our school up and move it? And we did just that. We literally ran one course down there, one full semester, 23 kids. And we had, I believe, two ladies graduated that course. I believe they're still both working for us. I'm not I wouldn't be held accountable to that, but I haven't heard any different. But again, the real part that I mentioned earlier is not near enough, because this is a great career choice for anybody. The trim aspect of things, we've not needed to run a class yet. But again, I think that a woman's eye on finished product is something to be had, and there's a real opportunity there. It's not as physical a job as maybe at the front end, although I don't want to discount that women can do any of this work. But I think on that trim side, probably the heaviest thing they're dealing with there is potentially a water heater, and we've got solutions for that and help for that. But other than that, it's really just a matter of installing trim product. And so there's really opportunity for everyone.
Yeah. What do you think construction businesses can do? What's one thing that we can do to attract more women into the trades?
Well, I think it goes back to the word we spoke earlier, is be professionals. Respect. I think that respect is, unfortunately, we're characterized as being disrespectful as an industry towards the female side of things. And, I think it starts with ownership in the companies, and taking a stand that, respect is what's important, regardless of whether you're working at a dentist office or you work out in the field. It's respecting everybody. And so, I think things have changed. I think that society as a whole is a little more respectful, without getting into politics at all, but just as a man-woman thing, and the ability, it just is. There's this, we're characterized as being disrespectful. It's the classic, cat calls as someone walks down the street in front of a construction project. I think that was more earlier on. I don't think it's quite as prevalent today, but it really is. There's, just respecting women as a whole, and allowing them to partake in the opportunities that exist in the trades.
Yeah, I think it's a perception problem. It's probably as much as anything more than it is a reality problem. I've been on job sites for the last 20 plus years. And it's not nearly as prevalent as it looks on TV.
Yep. No,
As
I absolutely agree with you.
as most perceptions about the construction industry. Yep. Plumbers, right? If somebody asked me like, what's the problem with why aren't young people going into the trades? Well, look at TV shows that have a plumber on them, right? The typical plumber, overweight, pants falling down,
Yep.
crack showing, sloppy, dumb. This is the typical trade, and the typical contractor is they are immoral, they are unethical, they're all about money. There's just, I think, one of our biggest challenges is to fix the perception problem. And one of the things I like to do is share stories of people who are actually doing it. So I've interviewed several women. I'd love to interview more women in the trades to get their story out there, because I think that's the key, is to push more information out there and get real stories out to change that perception problem.
I think you're right. I think the stereotyping is ridiculously skewed. We run again, I go back to professionalism, I guess. I mean, it's like I won't speak to just, our selfish plugs, but most all major franchise organizations across the country, we all run clean shops. I mean, is there that stereotypical guy out there? Sure. There is any trade, any business out there, any job that's being done. There's all walks and all types of people that do what they do. But again, I mean, we have an expectation of how people are going to act around here. And, again, you go back to, core values. And I mean, I'll just flash them up behind me because sometimes I use this background. It's know it, live it, and love it. I mean, there's 4 bullet points under each of those, and that really speak to what we think about how life should be here and how people should act. And if you don't get to work here. And, again, I think as a whole, as an industry as a whole, there's opportunities, and there's opportunity not for necessarily on the employee side. That's what I'm speaking to, but there's opportunities for us as business owners to hold a higher standard and change that perception of the trades. And I think it's critically important if we're going to continue to attract the that next generation of workforce. We have to act like a legitimate professional workforce that people would want to be a part of.
Yep, definitely. One last question about the training program. Then I want to talk about growing a construction business. What would you say is what's the secret sauce or the real keys to why your academy is much more successful than the typical trade school program? Like what's the secret sauce that people need to inject into their training program if they want it to be more successful?
That's a great question, and hadn't thought of it till you just asked it. But I have had conversations with other people, and so the millennials get they get thrown under the bus a lot. My experience is not what stereotypically people think of millennials. Is there some of them out there? Sure. Were some of the baby boomers just like them? You bet. A little different now because there's more toys, electronics to sit at home and play with potentially. But when the millennials get characterized as, living in mom and dad's house, that's a parenting problem. That's not a millennial problem. That's the parents allowing that to happen and not encouraging their youth to, move on. But I think that really what helps with it working is what I look at the youth of today is they are attaching actions to outcomes. So if I do this, what's in it for me? So that absolutely exists, but I think that's always existed. But I think being able to have a story about, outcomes, and that it doesn't take 4 years to be successful in a trade. Every single trade. So the Build Your Future was not about plumbers. That's about the industry as a whole. And if you go look at that site, it encourages you to look at both commercial and residential, and every single different trade that's in there is represented. Nearly all of them are in there, I believe. And it's really about, the workforce as a whole. It doesn't matter how big a workforce I build if the trades around me can't finish their portion of the home. So our biggest challenge last year and currently is actually having the next house ready, the next phase done in front of us. There's a sequence whereby a house is built, and if they don't frame it, we can't top it out. If the air conditioning's not in it, we can't do the plumbing. And so we're dependent on all the trades around us. And so they all need to, from my perspective, I'm not like, tongue lashing anybody. It's just my perspective is the trades as a whole need to do a better job of putting together training programs. And in order to do that, really have a way to get someone to the being successful stage sooner rather than later, later being it's 4 years down the road. And so, I don't know. I think what we've done as a model can be done in any discourse, be it electric, HVAC, framing. It's break it down to bite-sized pieces and making the commitment. So incurring the cost of making it a full week-long training, week after week. And, if you do it well, we've proven that you can get a return on it versus the, typical 4-year program that people aren't making enough money soon enough. And so they get bored and they figure, oh, I'll go try something else, and you lose them. And so you lose the investment. And that cost, I don't think people pay attention to enough. So, the secret sauce to me is to break it down, make it measurable, make it trainable, so that trainee, the person that's learning the trade, can be successful much more quickly. And because it's really about supporting themselves initially and maybe supporting the young family, they can't do that on $10-12 an hour. We start, I'll throw the number out there. We start our course day one, sitting in a chair, not knowing anything, at $14 an hour. They graduate out of it 6 months later, $22 an hour, and they go from there. And so, that's not chump change in anybody's book, I don't think. And you can actually, support yourself as you're learning, and then in fact, what we found was we had to add another piece to our curriculum, which was, cash management, their money management, because these young people we found are either getting ready to make more money than they've ever thought possible, at an earlier point in their life, and they didn't know how to deal with that. I guess that I'll call it wealth at an early age. It's not wealth, but it's a beginning of that wealth that they can take care of themselves for their entire life with if they manage it correctly. Otherwise, they end up, spending it inappropriately or ended up in a casino someplace, and it's just another job it becomes. And now then it doesn't pay enough because they got a habit that they need to. It just doesn't work. And so, by adding in that financial management piece to our curriculum, I think has really helped them understand that they have got a huge opportunity when they get out and they start earning the kind of money that they're going to be capable of earning to really get ahead in life.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, I that makes complete sense that you need to accelerate the training process. That 10% success rate is with trade schools and training is consistent with what I heard from the president of our local ABC chapter a couple of years ago. And that was what the program was. You worked all day and then you sat in a classroom for a couple of hours, and it took 4 years to become a journeyman plumber or an electrician or whatever the case may be. And we got to set it up so people can be successful faster. Yeah.
Believe me, there's many different ways to learn a trade, and I don't want to completely bash the 4-year system. It's there for a reason. And, the particulars around that, I won't discount that, work during the day, learn at night. And over time, you're able to add some skill set. We've just been successful with an alternative way to think about it. And I truly believe the youth of today is just not interested as a whole. Now, absolutely not everybody. It's not for everybody what we're doing and the way we do it, but it's successful. They're being extremely successful. And if you talk to any of our graduates that have been out for a year and a half, they can't talk about what a great decision it was that they made to come into a program such as ours. And it's not just us. Anybody can do this. They just have to work through it, put a curriculum together, again, understand it, and be able to commit to it, because it's not easy to, that beginning piece. It's a little expensive to learn up front, but we're more than willing to help people out, have a discussion with them, and you'll be able to help them put a program together and maybe eliminate some of those costs that we incurred not knowing what we didn't know.
Yeah, I think the mindset shift from just complaining about the problem to actually doing something about it, going upstream and thinking, all right, what's the real root cause here? And and then putting a system in place, taking some action that will address the root cause problem, as opposed to doing things like poaching from other people, which is not a great solution. Bitching and moaning about it, not doing anything, complaining, hoping the government or hoping somebody else is going to come in and fix it. It's probably not going to happen. It's something that people need to step up and take some initiative on.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a challenge. Just a real quick thing too. So that's all new construction we've been talking about. We've actually put a program together as well. And again, as you start looking at service technicians, a little different beast there, different animal, if you will. And, there's challenges in training on that side. But again, as we put a program, we've been so successful on the one side, on the new construction side, that we think it's the future for the service side as well. And so we're putting a program together there. We tested a little bit. I think we're having some success with, but again, it's still oriented to the same, break it down into manageable pieces that you can get a return on, instead of thinking about, well, he's not a plumber. Like, I can teach someone to do certain things, installs that you don't have to be a journeyman plumber, quote unquote, and know everything for 4 years to be able to go do. And so when we break it down to where they can actually engage with a consumer, engage with a customer, can go out and work with one of the other, journeyman plumbers that are out there and be on the job, help with them. And there's ways to go about doing that in a more, I think the difference between us and the historical is, typically in our trade, someone comes, hey, I want to be a plumber. They go out and, go work with them or go work with them. And, unfortunately, they learn a lot of bad habits that way. Where putting them in a formalized classroom to begin with allows us to kind of mold them in the direction that we think it should be done, that professional direction, in a way to handle themselves, the way to do their work, all those different things that we can also do on that service side. And so it's going to take a little longer. It's probably be a little more expense to it. But there's also an ability to offset some of that cost earlier on because their ability to go run with the journeyman technicians.
Let's shift gears and talk about your business. What I've seen in coaching construction business owners is there's this jump. It's very difficult to make, which is the jump from wearing all the hats, doing everything in the field, to operating as the CEO of a business, where there's delegation and systems and processes and people. What I found is that, frankly, the business owner tends to be the lid. And this probably goes back to John Maxwell's law of the lid, where the leader is the lid on an organization. Let's talk about two things. What were the keys for you for making the jump from being in a position where you were primarily working in the field to running the business and starting to grow the business?
Yeah, I think there's different inflection points. I hear that question, and it's not the first time I've been asked it. But it just became, day one, it was me and one guy. And then I started hiring a few people and we grew a little bit. And, you're wearing the cape, you're working, all day out in the field, you're managing people, you're actually doing the installs, you're doing some of the work yourselves. Then you end up going home at night and trying to make sure people get paid on Friday morning and doing payroll. And somewhere along the way, you have to bid additional work and pay bills and do purchasing. And so all these different hats as a small business you can do. But as we grew, it just dictated that, people got into those positions and I had to start handing those off. And I think that early it wasn't as bad because it was really more office help than anything. I still did all the bidding, but I didn't have to do invoicing anymore. I got someone that could do the accounting piece of it, and I got someone that could do the customer service side of it. And so I slowly added those pieces. But I think the real question there is, when did I get out of the way? When did I say, I may not be helping as much as I'm hindering? And, that probably took place. So we grew the company. We were still a relatively small business back through 2006, 2007. The marketplace pulled back heavily in the Phoenix market as the big guys couldn't shed overheads fast enough, and they closed doors, and it created an opportunity for me to hire additional staff. I was building a group of businesses that had leaders in each of those businesses, and so we came into the crash, if you will, late 2008, about kicked our teeth in. And but we didn't close up, we didn't fold up, and didn't go the easy route. We stuck it out and we worked through it. And it took us about 4 to 5 years to really transition through and come out the other side. And we learned a lot. I shouldn't say all, most of my leaders today went through that with us. We've all been together a long time. But ultimately in 2016, we actually reconfigured. And instead of having individual leaders of each distinct business, we kind of came together as an overarching executive team, if you will, that managed all the businesses. And when we did that, it just was a fundamental change. And so I stepped aside at that point. So there are 5 of us on the executive team. I happen to be the only plumber on the team. Everybody else has a different background. Our current structure, our president is actually computer sales background, competed with big companies like IBM, selling to big companies like American Express. And that's what his world was initially. He's been retired out of that world for, close to 15, 18 years probably. My CFO, no time to get into the story there, but I actually met him when he was in his late 20s. I think he's in his mid 40s now. And at the time, we were in trouble as you grew the business and you grew too fast. This was not all sweet, just level up to where we are now. We've been out of business about 3 times. One of them because of the economy, the other 2 because of Mike making probably not good decisions, or not knowing the decision he was making wasn't good. They weren't good. But one of them's from a home builder, and we decided a couple of years ago that we needed someone running operations that spoke, the language of the builders, that understood the builders' concerns, instead of us guessing at what they are and trying to fulfill on commitments and trying to make sure that we take care of those concerns. Someone that came from that side and understands those concerns firsthand allowed us to be able to, strengthen our leadership team. And then the 4th person on that team has actually got a technical background, and he manages all internal operations, all software, we've developed a whole lot of structure and technology that allows us to operate in the marketplace, unique to most of our competitors, if not all of them. Be that through, software internal that we use to manage the business, all the way to the guys out in the field that manage the guys in the field. And, so they're all mobile offices, basically operating right out of their trucks. They don't have to come into the office daily. In fact, it's a rare day when anybody comes to the office. In fact, he does the job so well that during COVID, our office typically had between 55 and 65 people in it. And, a year and a half ago, before our governor asked us all to go home for a few weeks, we sent everybody home a week before that. And we've been so successful, we've yet to bring anybody back. I think there's probably 8 or 10 people in the building today. There's certain pieces of it that need to take place on site. But other than that, most everybody is still working from home. And we've had arguably some of the best. Last year and a half has been the best year and a half in the entire 32 years of being in business. So he's done a good job of putting technology in place that allows us to do that.
You mentioned you almost went out of business 3 times, a couple of times because of decisions Mike made or didn't know he was making. What you can answer this one of 2 ways. I'm curious if you'd share the details of one of those decisions, or if there's another failure, a potential failure that you'd like to talk about. That
Sure.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the first one. Young company, about 3 years in. My model allows me to grow relatively inexpensively, and went from about 15, 17 guys to about 40 in about probably less than 60 days, I'll put it. And it was back when I was wearing all the capes and doing more than I should have, and not having the support around it to do that. And things frankly got out of control. And I was still early enough and naive enough to, think that just because I built somebody, I'd get paid on it. And not realizing that, contract work's pretty straightforward, but it's all those additional costs and extra costs that, you get POs written on, but you don't follow up. You don't get a PO number, but you bill it anyway. And it sits on your receivables as though it's cash, but it's not really cash. And then you go try to collect it. So there was a confluence of a whole lot of different things going on. And I think a big piece of that actually was, unfortunately, crystal meth came into the marketplace about that time, 20 plus years ago, 25 years ago. And that was a detriment to the workforce for sure for a while. And we weren't immune to it. And so there's just a whole bunch of things came together at once. Frankly, outran my cash fairly quickly. And so not having cash puts you out of business maybe faster than anything else. If you can't make payroll, you don't have a workforce. And so got into some troubles there. But that was a great lesson because my wholesaler still believed in me. He's the one that I owed most of the money to, and put me in touch with a consulting firm, accounting firm that basically required me to use if he was going to extend me credit. And so that I really kind of chalk up as my beginning of actually learning to be a business owner instead of just a plumber that ran a business. The second one probably was really about focus and knowing and understanding what you did. And so a few years ago, I guess it's been 5 or 6 now, time flies, but I thought I could be an air conditioning guy too. And found out that, it's a natural. Phoenix, 118 out yesterday, I mentioned, it's a natural place to be an air conditioning guy, heating and air. The challenge is we really don't have a heating season, and we have beautiful shoulders on the air conditioning side. And so it's really a 4-month, 5-month operation. And because it's not my first love and I didn't have no distractions, I could focus entirely on it. That really causes some pain. It didn't threaten the big business, but it threatened, definitely there was threats there. And so I guess the moral there is make sure you stay in your lane. You heard me describe what we do today, and what we do today is all plumbing. We're expert in plumbing. We know that business inside out. We're very, very focused. And so when people ask us what we do, it's all things plumbing. And we're very specific about that. But so really understanding your limits. And I guess you can look at both of those as two ends of the business. The one being, I hadn't realized yet that I needed to have good people around me to help me be able to do and grow the business. Thought I could do it all. The second being, I had really what had me launch into that even was I was a little bit bored. I had a great team that I don't have to worry about day-to-day operations. And so, I saw this shiny thing called air conditioning and thought, yeah, it's just business is business. Doesn't matter what the product is. And thought we were really good at business. And evidently the product does matter. So we got it kind of handed to us. And I'm not proud of that moment, but I like to think that we learn from every situation we put ourselves in. And so we learned a lesson there, and we won't make that, those kind of decisions again.
Gotcha. One more question for you. Going back to our conversation a couple of weeks ago, is it necessary to have a coach in business, or can people get everything they need and figure it out on their own?
That's a great question, and it's an easy one for me. So we adopted EOS. Gino Wickman wrote a book called Traction. We're just about 4 years into a 2-year program. And the reason we're still doing that is because it's a third party coming in 4 times a year, sitting with us, that's not involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. And I think when you speak about coaches, there's all kinds of systems out there, quote unquote. There's Traction, there's Gazelles, there's Rockefeller, there's all these different business systems. And so I believe that regardless of which one you choose, we found EOS works really, really well in our business. Whichever one you choose, you got to commit to. You can't go in halfway. But I think that leads into the coaching piece. Is there's typically a component, and there's independent coaches as well. And so I'm a huge believer in having a third party to kind of hold me accountable and my executive team accountable. And when I say accountable, we all sit around and we all have good conversations and really meaningful conversations, even with our own teams. It's that execution piece and that accountability to the execution is where I think we all struggle. Most people, not all. I mean, there's companies out there that build great businesses, but they're predisposed to being focused. And I find that most entrepreneurs and business owners have a challenge with that particular focus over time. And so that business coach, that system systemized approach, if you will, using somebody's system, kind of gives you some guardrails to keep you accountable as the leader of the company and holding your team accountable to what they say they're going to do. In fact, it's one of our, live it is do what you say you're going to do. It's one of the 4 bullet points there. When you say you're going to do something and then you don't, everyone in the company notices that. And so it tends to, you can say your core values are one thing, but your actions kind of dictate they're not. And so they become just words on a wall. If you're not operating inside of how you say you're going to operate, if you're not doing the things you say you're going to do, your entire team sees that. And so then nothing matters. Nothing's meaningful. There's really no consequence. Technically, you might lose a job, but it didn't solve the problem in the company potentially. So I think a business coach absolutely is powerful and helpful from that perspective. I laughingly said we're 4 years into a 2-year program. Traction is a 2-year program. They like to get you up to speed, get your team on it, hold you accountable for a couple of years, and then you have the ability to move on and do it on your own, with your team. But we found that the one component that we really truly enjoy is that third-party oversight, even though it's only 1 day a quarter. We reach out, there's some emails that go back and forth, some phone calls during the quarter, but for the most part, it's a quarterly meeting once a quarter. And, where we dive into the business. How do we do this quarter? What are we going to do next quarter? So there's all this accountability that goes as part of that, but it also helps us identify issues that we may not be noticing on a day-to-day basis. And, we whiteboard those, and then we're able to deal with those issues as well. And, some really great, powerful things come out of those kind of relationships.
Good stuff. Well, I know you've got time commitment here. I really appreciate this. If people want to reach out to you and find out, either connect with you or find out more about your company, where is the best place for them to go?
Yeah, probably to find out about our business is just it's brewercompanies.com. And then there's links, there's pages on there to the other businesses, even to the Craftsman Academy. There are different places you can get to all our different sites through that one site. I'm pretty open about putting myself out there. I do appreciate, I'll share my email address, so it's just mike.brewer@brewercompanies.com, and we'll put that in the notes. And my cell number, I'll actually give you my cell number.
Wow.
People don't blow it up. Text first and give me a little background on what you're coming from, and let me get back to you in my time. But it's 602-909-9677. I text, email, do all those things, and I'm open to conversations. I'm all about helping other business, entrepreneurs do better in their businesses. I'm at the tail end of my career. I've got 3 sons that are in the business, and we're a legacy business. And frankly, the opportunities are just huge in front of us. And who knows what tomorrow looks like? I mean, literally, it's the nature of our business, I guess, as a whole. Is, who knows what tomorrow looks like? There's constantly changes, constantly upgrades, constant conversations about how we build houses today versus how maybe we'll build houses in the future. So, but anyway, I'm more than willing to help anybody out, whether they're thinking around, whether it be the school, whether it's how do you make the transition, how do you jump places in your business, all those sorts of things. And I appreciate you having me on the show today.
My pleasure. It's been fantastic. Thanks so much, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
All right, be sure to check the show notes for the links that we talked about. Be sure to check out those resources that I mentioned. There's probably another resource that's going to come up here in just a moment. As always, thank you so much for the ratings and the reviews. If you could take a moment, leave a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or YouTube, wherever you're listening to this, that would be fantastic. That would mean a lot to me. And if you want a business coach, if you want a system to do the things that Mike talked about, if you want accountability, focus, set strategy for your business, and then have an objective third party to come in and help provide that focus and accountability to execute and implement on that plan, that's what I do for a lot of construction companies. The first step, if you'd like to talk about that and identify what the strategy is, identify the roadblocks and some of the systems that you need to put in place, I'd be happy to get on a free strategy call with you. You can go to constructionleadingedge.com. Click the red button that says schedule a free strategy call, and I'd be happy to do that if you own a construction business. There's also a bunch of other resources for you at buildermasterclass.com. Be sure to check those out. And once again, my name is Todd DeWalt. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you next time. One other thing I want to mention is an issue that I hear from contractors on a weekly basis. They tell me things like, Todd, we're busier than ever. I have more work in backlog. I have more employees, but we're not making the money we should, or we're making less money than we have when we had less work, or we're actually losing money. And I'll cut right to the chase. The problem is profit bleeds. There's plenty of profit in the projects, but that profit is bleeding out through a variety of ways. And what you need to do, if that's you, is you need to identify those profit bleeds and then put systems in place to eliminate the profit bleeds. If that sounds familiar to you, if you are losing profit, if you feel like profit is bleeding out of your projects, go back and listen. I want to tell you about two things. One, go back and listen to episode 156, where I walk through 8 profit bleeds that cause really busy contractors to lose money. Secondly, if that's you and you're concerned about that and you want to put together a plan to eliminate those profit bleeds, then let's set up a free strategy call. I would love to get on the phone with you, walk through some of those profit bleeds, and help get you started mapping out a plan to eliminate those profit bleeds. All you need to do is go to my website, constructionleadingedge.com, push the red button that says schedule a free call, and we'll get on a call, talk through those profit bleeds, and help you put together an action plan to stop that bleeding. More than 80% of contracting firms report they're having trouble finding skilled labor, and greatly inflated material costs are eroding the bottom line. Look, to be profitable, you need to manage your critically essential labor force with greater precision. The solution is Struxxy labor productivity software. Fully customizable reports allow you to establish ambitious yet realistic daily production goals, or as I like to say, what winning looks like, and estimate how many crew members and workdays are needed to complete a job on time and under budget. Struxxy lives in the cloud, and by reducing time clock rounding errors, this is a big deal, it will pay for itself on your very first project. Visit Struxxy.com to estimate your annual savings with their cost-saving calculator and to sign up for a 30-day free trial. That's Struxxy.com, Struxi.com. Software built